Well, welcome everybody to WAGONS West this Thursday, March 21st. I did just see we were having some issues streaming on Facebook. So if you are on Facebook and you are seeing this, please do leave a comment and let me know. Otherwise, you can catch us on Rumble, X, LinkedIn, and YouTube, of course. Tonight, I'm excited to have a special guest, Mr. David Parker, Executive Director of Take Back Alberta. He is a polarizing figure for sure in Alberta politics. He is loved by many. He is hated by many. I'm blessed to call him friend, and I appreciate him giving us the time today to come on and chat with us about some of the things we could do to prepare for the turbulent times we have ahead. Please welcome Mr. David Parker. Sir, thanks for coming on today.
TJ, it's good to be here.
Good to have you. So you are the executive director of Take Back Alberta. Maybe you can just give our listeners, if they aren't already aware of who you are and what Take Back Alberta is, what it is, and kind of how you got to creating the organization, and then we'll just shoot from there.
I'll try to keep it short because usually this conversation takes me about an hour and a half to tell the whole story of my background and how I got here. But to make a long story short, Take Back Alberta is an educational society. Now it was an educational society. Now it's an educational not-for-profit. And our goal in Take Back Alberta is to educate people on how their political system works and how they can impact change and make their voices heard. A lot of people think that the only way to make yourself heard is through protest, or there's also a lot of people who seem to think that all they have to do is vote every 4 years. I'll make a confession here. I even struggled with that in my own life. I didn't think that school boards mattered, and I've actually never voted in a school board election. I will definitely be voting in this next one, but I just never thought it was that important. So I'm an example of what Take Back Alberta is about. Is we got to get involved in every level of our society. We got to become leaders. And I truly believe, and I say this often, that the only thing standing in the way of tyranny is citizen engagement and involvement in their democracy. And I think many of us have suffered from the tyranny and felt the tyranny, but we haven't known what to do about it. I have the privilege, perhaps the experience to say that I've spent a lot of time in politics, and I actually do know how it works and how we can change it. And I think that my results and the results of the people within Take Back Alberta and the many hardworking volunteers and activists that are beginning to get engaged in their society, they are realizing that actually the system isn't nearly as broken as people think. The truth is we're the ones that are broken. We're the ones that haven't been participating in our society. And that's kind of the message of Take Back Alberta. If you want to know more about it, there's hundreds of articles about me online, and I've got hundreds of podcasts talking about things. So there's lots of information out there about it. But really, the core of it is teaching people to become leaders in their own society and how our political system works so that they can use that information to become leaders. And we're seeing that happen all over the province. In fact, most recently, I'm sure you're aware, I've been accused of being the secret puppet master behind this Recall Gondak campaign. I'd like to put that to rest. I have not collected a single signature for the Recall Gondak campaign, not because I don't agree with it, but I have other things that I'm working on. That's completely been done by just grassroots people wanting to get involved. Some of them have been involved in Take Back Alberta before. Some of them still are involved with Take Back Alberta, but it's not a Take Back Alberta initiative. And that's really the whole goal here. My dream is that I don't have to do this anymore. That's kind of why I'm working so hard, because what I would love to see is people like you, people like, I'm not going to say names because obviously there's a lot of haters out there, but people all over this province. I just want them to rise up and realize that they actually can lead and be in control of their society. And all it takes is showing up. One of the key phrases we use is the world is run by the people who show up. And that's just inherently true. It's true for anything. It's true for becoming good at sports. It's true for work. You got to show up, and you'll learn a lot just by showing up. And that's kind of the message that we're trying to convey.
So as you said, you are doing a lot of things. You have a lot of irons in the fire. And I think the most important thing you're doing right now, in my opinion, and I'd be willing to bet that you would agree that the most important thing you're doing right now is being a father. And
Yeah.
that's
Oh, absolutely. And that's probably why I look so tired. I am quite exhausted. I must say, you know, I have a lot of energy, and it seems that my son also has a lot of energy. So that takes a lot of my day and my life. And my wife is an absolutely amazing mother, but it takes it takes a village to raise a child, as they say.
yeah, for real.
And he doesn't like sleep very much right now. So we're just doing what we can.
What's the learning curve been like for you? Like, I just remember how life changing it was to have my first, and the second came along, and it was kind of like, I had to practice run with the first child. So just what's it been like for you? I'm just curious to know.
I think the coolest part about it, everyone comes to you and they say, look, your life's going to be changed forever. You're never going to be the same. And I was like, well, like, really? Am I going to be changed forever? Is my life never going to be the same? And I think the biggest change, the thing that I'm not the most important thing in my own life anymore. That's
Mm.
really what it comes down to. That is shocking to me. It might be a surprise to my haters, probably not. But like, I've kind of been a fairly selfish person most of my life. Like, I've kind of been focused on myself, on what I want, the things I want to do. That's different now. I mean, it's kind of hard to be selfish when you get up every day and you're like, well, the most important thing in my life isn't even me. It's my son and my wife, and then me. Not even then me, it seems these days. But yeah, that was the biggest change for me. Something that really shocked me was suddenly I didn't care about myself as number one in my life. I cared about my son more than and that's actually helped my faith a lot. I'm sure you know, and my faith is very important to me. And I'm a Christian, follower of Jesus Christ. Not a perfect one. Often fail. Often do things that bring shame to His name, and that's hard on me. But the truth is, that's the beauty of Christianity, is that it's for sinners, not saints, right? And what I've found is that having a son, having someone who means more to me, has also brought me closer to my faith, because it makes me think of what God Himself sacrificed His only son for us. So yeah, it's been really cool. It's been the best thing that's ever happened to me. People always say that, but I think for me, the best thing that has happened is it's caused me to be less selfish and caused me to grow in my faith.
That's amazing. Yeah, it certainly, I would see, can really give you a sense of what a father's heart is now
Well,
that you
yeah,
have one.
right, exactly. You're like, oh wow, how how can you sacrifice your son? I mean, I wouldn't be able to do that, to be honest. And it's kind of crazy to think that that's what happened. But that father's heart is, I think, is a perfect example. You have a lot more experience than I do, and I know you, for the sake of your family, moved your entire family across the country,
Mm.
and that's a father's heart. That's the love of your children that I'm sure propelled you to make such a big move. My parents moved out here before I was born. I was born here. My son's been born here. I hope his children are born here too. This is home, but they left their home. They left
Mm.
Ontario and they came here for a better life. And I think they definitely found it. I'm very proud of the sacrifices they made, but I'm now seeing the sacrifices they made. I had no family
Yeah.
around growing up. I didn't have grandparents coming to my recitals. I didn't have aunts and uncles coming to my birthday parties. And now I go to my nephews and nieces' birthday parties and I think, wow, like, this is so cool that I'm able to be here for that. But it also makes you kind of realize the sacrifices that my parents made, but I'm so thankful they did, because I would not want to be living in Ontario right now, even though I did for many years before I moved back.
Like you just said there, I'm trying to pull back the tears, actually, because I think I think of like the last day we were at my parents' place before we came out here. And my daughter's now 5, but she was 2 at the time, and she was just
Yeah.
so tiny. And she was walking with my mom, going for a walk around the street, and my wife and I were just watching from the door and watching them hold hands. And I just broke down. I'm like, this might be the last time that they ever see each other. And I think about my daughter in dance right now, and I think about all the things we're going to be doing, and we don't have grandma and grandpa around. They're in Ontario, they're still alive, but they're not here able to go to a recital. They're not able to go to see a karate class or whatever it is they may be doing. And so I just I just really felt that when you said that. So
Yeah,
uh,
I didn't even realize the impact it had, right? Because you only know what you're in, right? You only
yeah.
but let's think about it. Who took that from you, right? We know who took that
Yeah.
from you, right?
Yep,
It's
we absolutely
these
do.
crazy government bureaucrats who wanted to force us to live a certain way. And I think actually that's the beauty of the story of Alberta, and what's going to continue. No matter what happens to me or Take Back Alberta, the spark has been lit. This is going to become the most democratic place on earth. And it's going to be because of people like you who are making these sacrifices so that we can have a better life here. And that's what I'm fighting for. I'm fighting for your children not to have to leave. I'm fighting for my children not to have to leave. I'm just fighting for a place where people can be free to live the life they want. And, you know, I often get accused of wanting to control people's lives, right? That people say that I'm a tyrant, that I want to, you know, that say a lot of things. But the truth is, I just want people to get involved. If the people decide in mass that they want something other than what I want for policy, then that's their decision. But right now, people aren't making decisions. Unelected bureaucrats are making decisions. And we saw that in the pandemic. The politicians would not take responsibility for what they did. They just said, oh, no, these are the experts. Well, it turns out the experts were so wrong that something like 84% of Canadians are not getting boosters, even though that's what all the experts are telling them to do. Now, they may not would be willing to admit that they were wrong. They may believe, oh, well, when we did do the vaccines, that was the right thing to do. But they're not doing it anymore. So their actions, I think, speak a lot louder than their words. And one of my favorite Latin sayings is acta non verba, actions, not words. I don't believe in words, really, even though it's funny that we're talking here. If I just sat here and talked to you and went around just talking to people and didn't show up and get people involved and go to rallies and give speeches and make sacrifices like I have and like many, many, many freedom people have, then nothing would have changed. Alberta would be just as bad as the rest of the country. But we've been able to create a movement in this province that I think is going to spread across the country. And I think we're already seeing it spread across the country. If you look at what's happening in British Columbia, it's beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful what's happening there. The old liberal, middle of the road, lukewarm people are losing support, and the real principled conservative people are getting to the point where they might be able to stop the NDP, which frankly, from a political perspective, looked impossible 6 months ago. But the people are rising up, and that's what I have faith in. I have faith in the people, the good, common sense, regular folk who go work, have families, care about their community. I think they're going to realize that it's on them. There's no politician going to, like, this whole notion that Pierre Poilievre is going to fix Canada is the biggest joke I've ever seen. It's the biggest joke. And it's not because I don't support the Conservative Party. I gave 10 years of my life to the Conservative Party. I believe in a lot of the principles that supposedly underlie that party. But the problems that face us are so vast and so immense. No leader can fix this, and no leader will. And this is what we have to get out of our heads, that there's someone coming to save us. And it's such a human tendency, right? We try so hard to find a silver bullet, an easy fix, right? What is the next easy fix? And I was watching, funnily enough, a reel the other day by a football player, and he said, I thought football was about getting a touchdown. And I learned that no, actually, football is about getting a first down. And if you get enough first downs, you will get a touchdown. And so many people are looking for the touchdown. They're looking for the win. They're looking for the silver bullet. They're looking for the leader that can fix things so they don't have to, so they can go back to living their normal life. And I guess a big message of Take Back Alberta and my philosophy is that's wrong. That's not going to work. No leader's going to fix this. Any individual leader will be corrupted by power. Every single one, without exception. There's no exceptions to that rule. And what you often see in politics is it's a battle between leaders. It's a battle between personalities. It's oh, I follow this person or that person. Well, even with myself, right? There are a lot of people who don't like me. And they keep attacking me because they think I'm the leader of Take Back Alberta. I'm not. The leaders of Take Back Alberta are the people in their communities who are gathering people together and showing up. All I am is a teacher, is the best way of putting it, an educator. All I do is tell people how the system works. If they don't show up, I'm useless. I'm nothing. What matters is that people are getting together and fixing things. And that's happening all over the province without me doing anything. Of course, I get blamed for a lot of it, But the point is, they're not scared of me. They're scared of you. They're scared of everybody in this province realizing what a raw deal regular citizens are getting, and how the elites are enriching themselves. And some people call it leftist. Some people claim that I'm a revolutionary. I'm not. I'm the opposite. I don't want to overthrow the government. I want to absolutely transform the government, reform it. I want people to be in charge. The birth of this idea for me was actually a short squeeze that happened I guess it was in the late fall, early spring of 2020, 2021. It was a GameStop.
Wall Street Silver? Oh, GameStop. Yeah.
GameStop, yeah.
Yeah.
I got into it early. I was super pumped about it because I wanted to screw over the hedge funds. I hated them. I hated how they destroyed companies and destroyed people's lives just to make an extra buck for their shareholders. And it's funny because I spent a lot of time on Reddit during that time, even though if you go on the Alberta Reddit or anywhere else on Reddit, I'm, the most evil person in Canada. But I have spent a lot of time on places like Wall Street Bets. And I watched a group of people gather together and screw over the hedge funds and say, no, we love this store, GameStop. We love our memories of it, and we want it to succeed. And so we're going to back it no matter what. And they crushed them. They cost the shorts. There's even a movie out about it now called Dumb Money, which is hilarious.
Oh, wow. Okay. I'll check that out.
I would definitely recommend watching it. My wife and I watched it, and I enjoyed it quite a lot because I went through that whole experience. Like every moment in that movie, I was there for the ride, right? And that there's a line that came out of that. It's not a new line, but it's a line that really spoke to me, and it's power to the people. Actually, the one they use is power to the players. And that's what I want. I want our citizens to have the power, because actually what I believe is that power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. And the only way to stop that is to diffuse power, to take it and make lots of people have power so no one person is controlling us. And I think the only way to do that, I mean, Switzerland is a beautiful example of this. Switzerland has a great democracy. They have democracy about everything. They have tons of little, very powerful local governments that, if you don't like your local government, you can go move to the other local government, and there's competition in governance, and people are happy. It's a very prosperous place, very peaceful place, very orderly place. And that's because people take responsibility for their society. And I think that's what we need to do here in Alberta. And people say, oh, you can't change things. Look at Singapore. Singapore was a swamp 100 years ago, and now it's one of the most prosperous societies on earth. Now, would I want to live in Singapore? No, I think they're too totalitarian for me. But that's the society they decided to build, and it's very prosperous. I want to live in a different kind of society. I want to live in a society that can build something great. If we can't build great things and prosperity, which I think if you can't build prosperity in Alberta, where can you build it? We're sitting on the 4th largest oil and gas reserve in the world. We got very hardworking people. Yeah, it gets cold here, but that's good. It makes us tough. It makes us strong. And I love the cold. I love that it gets cold here. I mean, despite the fact that I nearly died recently on the side of the road when my truck broke down at -40, right? But still, I'd still take that. I'd still take that, risk of death because I think it makes us stronger. And I think
the cold climate. Sorry, yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, that cold climate, there's something to be said about the stock of a person that does live in a colder climate. I mean, even coming from Southern Ontario to Northern Alberta, there's a big difference in the people around you, and I really appreciate the ethos of the people up here in Northern Alberta for sure.
Yeah, I love Albertans. I love Albertans from every tribe, creed, denomination, right? We've got great Muslim brothers and sisters in Take Back Alberta. We have amazing Sikh people in Take Back Alberta. I've really been enjoying getting to know the Nigerian community in this province. But they all come here for the same reason. Everybody comes to Alberta for the same reason: a hope of a better life. You don't move to what some people have referred to as a frozen wasteland for the fun of it. right?
No,
You
no,
move
no.
here because there's opportunity, and there really is opportunity here. Alberta's given everything to me. My family's all here. I'm not leaving. I'm not going anywhere. I'm going to fight for this place till my dying breath because I believe in what it is and what it could be. And what it could be is something truly extraordinary. All we need to do is come together and build it. And you don't build something by relying on government.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing great has ever been built by relying on government.
So in that kind of story you just said, there's a lot to unpack. One thing you made me think of when you talk about there is no kind of politician, there's no leader that's going to save you, makes me think of Canada generally as kind of being like a monopoly. You know, you have your Bell, you have your Rogers, you have your 1 or 2 or 3 parties, and that's it. You know, and and combined with that, it really does seem sometimes like a cult of personality. Like right now, you have Pierre and Trudeau. It's not even about the Liberal Party and the CPC. It's about Pierre Poilievre eating his apples and Justin Trudeau, you know, doing whatever he's doing. And there's this cult of personality. And in Alberta, you have that too. You have those loyal to Danielle Smith and those, you know, well, they're now trying to pick who their new leader is going to be, but you have, you know, this cult of personality going around. So it is very important, I think, for people to recognize that the answer is the man in the mirror or the woman in the mirror. And that's why I entitled this episode with you, The Political Solution, because that is the political solution, is you and the people shoulder to shoulder with you. It's not that party at the top.
Yeah.
You know, and
I want to be clear, just to clarify, I'm not the political solution, right? All I'm trying to do is present a political solution. And I think you're an example of that. You moved out here and you've got involved. You've written a book. You made a video. Correct me if I'm wrong. Of a speech by James Lindsay in Edmonton that got 450,000 views online. Right?
Yeah,
that's impact. Like you reached more people by doing that than any mainstream media had done for that particular day. Right? You got a message out, an important message, I would add. And that would not have gotten to that many people without the work that you did. And that's you doing your part. You're a talented photographer, you're a videographer. And so you took your talent and you applied it to the problem we're facing. And I think you played a big role in the policies, the very good policies that the premier put forward. Because you made a voice heard all across, I would say, the nation, but particularly in Alberta. And when we're seeing that happen more and more by people like you, and my dream is that we have people doing that in their way wherever they can, right? So in my particular case, I'm good at politics. I think even my enemies agree that I'm pretty good at organizing, and so I'm trying to use that to get people to wake them up to do something. And I think I lost it. Oh yeah. So the important thing is if we all do as much as you and I are doing, let's say, if even 1,000 people did, it would change the course of Alberta's history. But what often happens, and this has happened to me, and I'm going to use this as an example. Look, I'm not a perfect human being at all. In fact, I'm quite the opposite of a perfect human being. I would even argue that I'm quite a flawed human being. And what happens is when I do things that people don't like, they get upset. They want to drop their tools. They don't want to do the mission anymore because they don't like David Parker. Now, sometimes I don't like David Parker, but it's not about David Parker. It's about the mission. And the mission is the most democratic place on earth. That's my mission. And a lot of people have bought into that. And I think as they have, we're seeing huge increases in the number of people participating at things like AGMs, annual general meetings. The party annual general meeting that occurred last November had 4,000 people at it. I've never seen that many people at an annual general meeting of any kind, including of the Conservative Party of Canada, in my life. And I think this one coming up next November in Red Deer will be the biggest political gathering in Canadian history. I think there's going to be 8,000 people there. And that's going to be because of all of the people across this province, right? Showing up. That's what it is. and it's going to be beautiful.
When I came out here originally, and like just to bring it back to your faith, right? You talk about your faith as a Christian, and there's that Pauline letter, and I'm a little rusty on my on my Pauline letters, but he's talking about the body of Christ. I think it's in First Corinthians or something. And you have the hand's going to do what the hand does, and the foot and the eye, and you all have your individual job and your gifts and your skills. And when I came out here, I thought, how can I fight? At my core, that's who I am. I'm a fighter, and that's what I do. And I thought I could do a lot more with my camera than I can with my fists. So let's just fight that way. And it reminds me. It reminds me of what you said. And so this was covering the protests, of course, but you said something in a call one time that really stuck with me. And it was, I like protests. Protests are great. You should protest. But what a protest is saying is you're in charge and I don't like what you're doing. What I want to say now is we're in charge. Can you elaborate on that for us?
Yeah, this is a really important point, and it's one that the freedom movement really struggles with, right? Because what happened with the convoy was absolutely beautiful. It was the organic rising up of people across Canada to say, no, enough. We're not doing this anymore. And that was beautiful. But the only thing they knew how to do was protest. And so they showed up in Ottawa and they protested. And eventually it was like, well, if they don't do what we want, what's the next step? And I think there's still a lot of people trying to relive the glory of that protest. And we see it happening all the time. They're constantly trying to start another convoy. People are still doing protests. But my message to people is protesting is only the first step. If we don't like what's happening in our society, we have to be the ones making the decisions. And it's really hard for people because, frankly, most people are pretty lazy and they want other people to fix their problems. And even conservative people are quite lazy. And going back to what I said a little bit earlier about myself, people will say, well, I don't like David Parker, so I'm not going to show up. Well, who cares how you feel about David Parker? Do you like what's happening? I'll give an example. The Alberta pension plan. Right now, we're trying to hold Take Back Alberta was hosting meetings for the Alberta pension plan across the province. And what we kept hearing was, well, I don't want to sign because it's Take Back Alberta. I don't want to be involved with David Parker. And so Take Back Alberta is not going to be hosting the meetings anymore just because of that. But the thing is, they weren't saying that because of any other reason than actually they don't want to do anything. And they found an excuse. Well, I don't like that person, so now I'm just not going to do anything. But you have to ask yourself, why does it matter how you feel about other people? What about the mission? Is it better for Alberta to have a pension plan or not? And if it is, you should fight for that. You shouldn't care about people's personalities.
We're back. There you go.
Oh, did I lose you? What was the last thing I said? You're
yeah,
kind of
we just
Oh yeah. It said you had said the people don't want to do anything. And what does it matter if you don't like somebody?
Okay, hold on. I'm going to turn off my internet. Hopefully that helps a little bit on my phone. Well, yeah. So I don't think it should matter whether you like other people or not. And that's a big flaw that most people have when it comes. And that goes back to leadership, right? If you're following someone because you want them to fix problems and you're supporting someone because you want them to fix problems, and then you suddenly don't like that person anymore, then you're going to lose hope. You're going to be like, oh, it's done. There's nothing that can be done. Well, that's stupid, right? If you believe in a project, you shouldn't care about how you feel about the leader. I'll give an example. I am a Catholic. I converted to Catholicism when I was 25, and I don't like the Pope. I don't agree with him. I don't agree with what he's saying about Christianity, but there's been lots of bad popes. I'm not going to stop being a Catholic because there's a bad pope. But that's the mentality that we have, I would say, particularly in the Western world. But in the freedom movement, it's really bad because, and for obvious reasons. Freedom people don't like to be told what to do. That's why we're freedom people. And they like to do things their own way, and they like to go their own way. But that's why we keep getting beat, because everybody comes up with a new plan and it's all these little leaders running around. Well, instead of a whole bunch of little leaders running around, what if we all said, we're going to do this thing like we did with Jason Kenney, like we did with Danielle Smith, like we did with the board of the United Conservative Party, like we did in the election. People got together and they said, you know what? We're just going to do something together. And they did. And that's what we need to keep doing. And I think the problem is right now, particularly with the freedom movement, we've lost a direction. We don't know what we're trying to achieve anymore. And so everybody's off running around doing their own thing. I think that if we wanted one objective, it should be the greatest democracy on the face of the planet. And we all work towards that. And that means that if people don't like me, it doesn't matter, because they're all building the greatest democracy on the face of the planet. And they're all taking steps to get us closer to that. And what does that look like? It looks like a lot more people showing up. That's it. And people are like, well, I don't know how the system works. And I don't know politics. I don't like politics. Who cares whether you like it or not? Just show up and learn how it works. I don't like exercising. I don't like going and getting my body sore and feeling like I'm, a loser because I can't bench press as much as my cousin or something like that. But at the end of the day, my feelings about exercise are irrelevant. I need to be a good example for my son about what a man does to take care of his body. And so that's what I have to do. And it's the same with politics. It's not about your feelings. If you let it be about your feelings, then you're going to be manipulated by propaganda. And that's what's happening in our society, is everybody's talking about their feelings, and our society's crumbling.
People get discouraged about the system a lot. A lot of people think, another reason why this is called the political solution tonight is because you hear quite often there is no political solution because of all the disappointment and disenfranchisement that people feel after an election doesn't go their way, or after maybe a politician they put their hope in, goes the other way they thought they were going to go or said they were going to go. And when we get onto even the way elections are held, the integrity of elections is in question. And so this is something I wanted to talk about with you a little bit, because tomorrow, in fact, you are going to be going into Elections Alberta for certain reasons, and there's going to be a protest outside of Elections Alberta as well. Can you elaborate why you're going there and what the purpose of this protest is?
Yeah, so this is very important, and I'd like to add, kind of Take Back Alberta began as a grassroots movement because of the corruption of Jason Kenney over the mandates and the vaccines, and basically a large group of people being pushed out of society, ostracized, all that kind of stuff. But the third thing that Take Back Alberta was founded on, and I've been saying this all over the province over and over again, was this: we have to have integrity around our elections. We got to get rid of electronic voting. Now, people claim that the reason we have to get rid of electronic voting is because of cheating. Now, I believe that there has been cheating through electronic voting, but that's actually not the biggest reason that we need to get rid of it. It's because people can't trust electronic voting. You can trust to a high degree if you're looking at ballots on a table and you're watching them be counted. You can trust that outcome. Not fully, there's still people who could stuff ballots, and there's all kinds of stuff, but it's a lot easier to trust that than a print off from a machine. And I think that our democracy is sacred. And why I think it's sacred is because it's the only method we've ever found as humans to keep tyranny in check. And it's also brought about the most human flourishing in human history. So we need to protect that. And not only do we need to protect it, we need to protect people's faith in it. And a lot of people, particularly because of what happened in the States, have lost their faith in the voting system. So the third pillar of Take Back Alberta is no more electronic voting anywhere in this province ever again. And recently, the premier in Bonnyville at a fundraiser announced that she was getting rid of electronic tabulators across the province. That's a huge win. I consider it one of my greatest political victories. Of course, I'm not the only one who played a role in it, but I have been advocating for it for years. And I think she's going to do it. She said she's going to do it. So that's going to give us a chance to have a fair democracy. Now, we're still going to need people showing up at every single polling booth, volunteering to watch the vote, to make sure that nobody's stuffing ballots, to make sure it's fair. We still have to be very vigilant citizens, but it's a lot easier to be vigilant over paper ballots than it is over electronic voting. Recently, Taiwan just had an election. Every single voter had to show voter ID and proof that they were supposed to be voting at that station. And all of the ballots were counted paper ballots with cameras on the ballots that anybody in the whole country could watch. And that's how they're stopping the Chinese Communist Party from taking over their society. I don't see why Taiwan, which is a country with a similar GDP and a similar population to Canada, why, if they can do it, Alberta can't. I think Alberta absolutely can, and I think we will, and that's important. Now, in terms of why we're having a protest outside of Elections Alberta tomorrow and why I've been subpoenaed there, Elections Alberta, most of the people in power there have been appointed by the NDP. And that means that even though 50, and I'm aware of it's probably a lot more, but I'm aware of 50 complaints, including from the executive director of the United Conservative Party, people have filed complaints saying, hey, the unions are breaking the law and they're colluding with the NDP. In fact, a head union guy was married to the leader of the NDP and was running a PAC or involved in a PAC, and they're saying there's no collusion? Like, this is ridiculous. However, there have been complaints about Take Back Alberta. There's been claims that my meetings are election advertising. And so Elections Alberta is investigating Take Back Alberta, and they are trying to, I don't even know. They haven't even told me what they're accusing me of. There's a whole list of crazy accusations, like I'm colluding with the United Conservative Party. I don't know if anyone noticed, but the previous premier said that I was a lunatic. The current premier has said that I need to seek mental help. And the former president of the party literally was at war with me, and I was at war with her. I'm not colluding with the party. If anything, I'm pretty sure most of the higher ups, the mucks of the party, would love to see me disappear. So it's a ridiculous claim. There's also been claims that I'm enriching myself. I can tell you I have impoverished myself trying to teach Albertans how their democracy works. I have gone in substantial debt in order to do that, which I can prove to anyone who is interested. But none of that matters to Elections Alberta. What matters to them is their partisan attacks on... They should be thrilled that I'm running around the province on my own dime, trying to teach people to be more involved in their democracy. That should be the purpose of Elections Alberta, to get more people involved in democracy. But instead, they're more interested in their partisan aims. And I know that on paper, they're supposed to be nonpartisan, but the fact that they're investigating Take Back Alberta, they've investigated a lot of conservative people over the years, and they're not investigating the unions, and they're not investigating these left-wing activist groups. It's just evidence that our bureaucracy has been captured by, I call them a small fringe minority with unacceptable views. But
correct me if I'm wrong, is not Gil McGowan running for leadership of the NDP in Alberta right now?
He's running for the leadership of the NDP while still being the president of the Alberta Federation of Labor and using the list from the Alberta Federation of Labor to campaign. So, I mean, that's about as big of a violation of the Elections Act, as far as I can tell, that you can do. And we've even sent complaints to Elections Alberta about that, and basically been told he can do whatever he wants. So apparently he could do whatever he wants, but me going around to town halls and literally, I mean, you've been to some of my meetings, just telling my story, saying how I got involved in politics, the impact I was able to have, and how other people can do that. Like, the media has said that I am grandiose and I like to, like, pump myself up, that I'm a narcissist. But the reason I was telling my story wasn't because I want everybody to know who I am. The reason I was telling my story was to say a homeschooler from Haines with no political connections at all went from 14-year-old showing up at his first political meeting to working for the Prime Minister of Canada. That happened because there's nobody else doing anything. People don't show up. There's so few people that show up that I didn't have any competition, really. And now I've put in so many hours and have so much experience that people are like, oh, how is he doing this? He must be cheating or trying to destroy democracy. No, I got a lot of experience and I know what I'm doing. That's all it is. And anybody can do that. And there's a lot of people in Alberta doing that right now. And they're finding that out, that getting involved can make a difference.
It reminded me of a story from when I was in high school. I was big time into track and field. I loved the track sports more than the field sports. And in high school, I competed in the 300-meter hurdles, which is really tough. And I made it to whatever the regionals were. And I like to tell people I came in 4th in my entire school, but there's only 4 people that competed. So like basically if I didn't compete, they wouldn't have a team. So, just by virtue of me showing up, I got on the team and went to the competition. Right. So if there's an empty spot, you could just walk into it and the spot is yours because there's no competition.
Okay. Here's a great example. School boards in this province, 25% of the people on school boards right now are on the school board because nobody ran against them. 25%. 1 in 4. Literally all they had to do was show up. So that's how apathetic and anemic our democracy is right now.
There was I've told the story in a couple of episodes about a friend that ran here in a by-election up here for a school board trustee position and lost the election. There were 2 other people running. The person that won got like 39 votes. She got 32 votes. And then the third person got like 7 votes. So like there's not a lot of people voting in an election. So A, there's not a lot of people running, and B, there's not a lot of people voting. So if you can change those things, you can change the face of the entire province.
Absolutely. And that is what they're terrified of. They're not scared of David Parker, the homeschooler from Haines. They're not. All that they're scared of is that people are listening to me and getting involved and getting organized. And that is terrifying. And to a point that you made earlier about people being kind of disenfranchised and saying that there's no political solution. Well, the left doesn't believe that. They've been working on this for 30 years, and that's how they took over all of our institutions. And all you have to do is go listen to James Lindsay's podcast. He articulates this much better than I ever could. It's called the New Discourses podcast. And he walks through how they took over our schools of education, indoctrinated our teachers, and now they have our children. That's how it worked. It's very simple. You can go listen to him. He's read all of the literature. He walks you through it. I listened to him for the first time. I guess it would have been in the summer of 2023. And I was so happy. I've never felt such a sense of relief because finally someone explained to me. I knew what was happening was wrong. I knew it was bad. I hadn't taken the time to figure out how they were doing it. He did. And after it was explained to me, I'm like the biggest James Lindsay fan now in the world. Like I love the guy. He's become a good friend as well. But what the work he's doing is beyond important. And he was just on Joe Rogan.
That's right.
Like last week, I think. I don't remember the exact day. And it already has, well, let's look it up here because Joe Rogan.
Yeah,
I think it has it was like 800,000 views just on YouTube. And YouTube is not where people listen to podcasts. They listen to podcasts on Spotify. It has 888,000 views right now. And that's on YouTube. I'm told by him that it's going to have over 10 million plays across Apple Podcasts and Spotify, of course. That's getting a message out. And he works his butt off to do that. He does 195 speeches a year right now, which is more than even I did in the height of last year in the campaign. He's a hero. And if you go and listen to him and educate yourself, just all you have to do is when you're driving, and in Alberta we drive a lot, just put on one of his podcasts. He will give you the information you need to understand what's actually happening. And I think that's what we need. And I actually think that's why the truckers were the heroes of Canada was because they drive around listening to podcasts all the time, and they're probably some of the most educated people in Canada now because they are constantly learning, right? And that is the beauty of modern technology. We're going through a cultural revolution, not in the bad sense, of our own, which is a revolution from the written word to the spoken word. And you and I are participating in that right now. This is how humans throughout almost all of human history have conveyed knowledge, through conversation, through talking. But for a long time, it was easier to read than to talk. And so the people who were good at reading became the most educated, and a certain kind of analytical thinking became the mode of communicating knowledge. That's done with podcasts, which are much more popular than books have ever been, with things like what you're doing, people getting their voice out. And thank God for Elon Musk, because at least we have one platform that is not censoring us on this. But the future of how we convey knowledge is going to be through long form conversation. Lex Freeman agrees with me on that. Joe Rogan obviously is probably the front.
He's like he's like what do you call it? He's like the prototype.
Yeah, he's the prototype. But the thing is, Joe Rogan is one guy.
Yeah.
There are so many people doing this now, and there's so much information getting out there. I mean, that's what I would say, let's call them the globalists, the elites, the people who want power and control over others, whatever you want to call it. That's what they're truly afraid of. And you see that in Ireland very recently. They passed a law that the police can go into your house and confiscate your computer and your cell phone and look at what you're doing. And Michael Schellenberger, who's a great hero of freedom, is calling for the whole world to stand with the Irish. Conor McGregor's doing a great job, despite his many flaws, of standing up to the tyrants. We just need, if enough of us do that, they're done. There's way, way, way more of us than there are of them. Way more.
If anyone knows anything about the Irish, they're a feisty bunch, and they will fight you.
I don't know if you've got Irish blood, but I've got Irish blood, and I'm quite proud of my Irish blood. Although it's funny because I've also got English blood, and so I've got the oppressors and the oppressed.
Yeah, of course,
flowing through my veins on that one.
I was just talking to my kids earlier today. Actually, I had my dad had got me I took it off for this, but it was a gray sweater, and it had our family insignia on it. And it has 3 helmets. It says Kennedy. It has 3 helmets on it. And I was telling him the history. The Kennedy actually means ugly-headed. And I was like, it's kind of not very flattering. Yeah, no. Ugly-headed, though, because it comes from the Battle of Clontarf. It comes from way back when Vikings and the Danes invaded Ireland and the Celts fought them, defeated them, restored Ireland to Celtic rule, and they celebrated by parading around in their helmets. And so it was because the Viking helmets, the defeated Viking helmets that they were called the ones with the ugly heads. So therefore Kennedy. So it's kind of it's a nod to kind of the fighting spirit back then. But if you translate it now,
that is a great name. Parker means keeper of the park. So it's not.
There you go.
I like to say we were the Rangers, right? We were the guys who ran around the forest taking care of things. But I think it's cooler to have beheaded Vikings, to be honest.
Yeah, man. You said before, just in our conversation, the importance of you showing up and actually going around and being physically in person. And we talk about how beneficial it is to have technology like this, where we can chat and we can disseminate, and we could have James Lindsay go on a podcast and get 10 million eyes on it. But I think that's important for influence, absolutely. But I think real change or real influence happens with the people that you can reach out and touch. And I think there is something to be said for physical things, being in person and being very physical. And when I went to some of your meetings, I know you mentioned your Muslim friends and Sikh friends that would support you and would sponsor your events when others would pull away because of the pressure put on by the left. And one of the sponsors is Bow Valley Credit Union. And one of the things I liked hearing about Bow Valley Credit Union when Brett, I think, was the gentleman that was speaking on behalf of Bow Valley Credit Union at these events, was that they actually invest in gold and silver. And this is something I know that you're really into, and I'm a little bit of a nerd about it as well. So I'd love to chat about that and encourage people.
Let's get into the precious metals conversation. But I think to start the precious metals conversation, we have to talk about fiat currency, right? And we have to talk about why Bow Valley Credit Union is growing so quickly and why it's so successful is because they understand that government money isn't real. And people get really mad at me for saying that. And I've had even some of the people I respect most in the world say, well, if we don't use fiat currency, the economy is going to collapse. And there are arguments to be made for why government money has been quote unquote more effective. But the problem actually isn't the technology. And maybe I'll go back a little bit for your viewers. Fiat currency means fiat means by order. So governments can just create money out of nothing. And that's called quote unquote printing money. And the problem with that isn't so much that they can do it, it's what human nature does when you have the ability to do that. And what human nature does is just do it, right? If you have the option just to create money from nothing, why wouldn't you? But the problem with that is, and we're seeing this happen all over the world, Argentina, Lebanon, Egypt, everywhere is seeing, there's tons and tons of places seeing horrible inflation. What we're seeing in Canada barely even registers compared to the pain and horror that many in the world are experiencing. But the problem with it is reality will always win, no matter what. It doesn't matter how you feel. I mean, that's why Ben Shapiro has his little statement, which is facts don't care about your feelings. And I think in the context that he's using it, he's actually wrong. Feelings don't care about facts, right? And in politics, that's kind of what we're experiencing is the rule of feelings. But the reality is that however you feel, reality is going to get you. It always will. Let's take smoking, for example, something that I've struggled with in my life. Cigarettes are something that I really try to quit, but I keep coming back to them. It doesn't matter whether I like cigarettes or not. Cigarettes are terrible for me, right? And they will cause me damage, and they have caused me damage. I can feel however I want about that. I can feel it's too hard to quit. I can feel like I don't want to quit or that I need it for stress. Whatever it might be, that's irrelevant to the reality of cigarettes. Another example would be whether or not you're born in a man or a woman's body, right? People go out and say, well, does it really matter? But, does it matter that they don't want to be the body that they were born into? I say, yeah, because reality matters. And teaching someone that they could have been born in a wrong body is saying that reality is subservient to your feelings. It's actually a form of Gnosticism. And Gnosticism is the idea that you are God. And whether you're Sikh, Muslim, Christian, Jew, you're not God. That's the important part, right? And I don't know how anyone could actually think that they were God. I mean, I can't control my son's sleeping habits. How could I possibly believe that I'm God? So that's the basis here to say that reality is going to win. And when one of the rules of reality is that the more there is of something, the less valuable it is, right? A blade of grass is not going to be nearly as valuable as, let's say, an ounce of gold. There's a lot of blades of grass, not very many ounces of gold. But if a government can just make more of something and they just keep increasing the supply of that thing and there's more of it, it's going to be less valuable. And that has created a system in which people, primarily, employees, but generally speaking, everybody, think that money is something that someone else gives you and that money has value. And so they believed that for a long time. But as the government creates more and more of this fake money, I call it, it loses its value. And that is a big part of what increases inflation. And to give a great example of this, you could buy a house right now for the same amount of silver that you could buy a house 100 years ago. You could not do the same with dollars. And the reason for that is there's some things that hold value and there's things that lose value. Things that have more and more supply lose value. Things that kind of keep the same supply hold value. So with all that in mind, why do I think that precious metals are so important right now? Because I think we're headed into a time of extreme inflation. And I know that everyone's laughing about, oh, it's come down now a little bit. But anyone living in this country right now knows the pain of inflation unless they're quite wealthy. I go to the grocery store and I'm shocked.
Dude, that's crazy.
I don't know how people handle it. And I'm not exactly impoverished. Like, I've, worked hard in my life and I have some money, not a lot, but some. And I'm shocked by it. I'm in the process of buying a house right now. And the prices of housing are insane. It's absolutely mind-boggling. And this is Alberta. I can't even imagine how the people of Ontario or British Columbia are feeling right now. And that's happening because of inflation. That's happening because, well, it's happening for a number of reasons on the housing front. But inflation is happening because of bad government policy. Because government would rather borrow and then realize, oh no, I borrowed too much. This is a problem. But if you borrowed a lot of money and then you make money worth a lot less, you have less debt. But the problem with that is that wages for employees do not keep up with the printing of money. So really what you're doing is you're just impoverishing your citizens. And even more than that, it doesn't encourage saving, right? Why would you save something that was going to be worth less? In fact, recently, it used to be that your money would lose half its value over 7 years. So what did that encourage you to do? Spend. And the reason that these policies were created to encourage spending was because the more consumption that happens, the argument in modern economics is the more people are spending, the better the economy, the more prosperous we are. Well, that may be true in the short term, but look what's happening in the long run. Canadians are the most indebted they've ever been. We're facing an absolute crisis in housing, not just because we're bringing in way too many immigrants. And I love immigrants, but when we only build 247,000 housing units a year and we bring in 2 million immigrants, where are they going to live? Right? We don't have the capacity to build the housing for people, and therefore people my age and younger can't even afford to buy a house. Right? That's happening because of bad economic policies, bad immigration policies, bad policies. So, what does silver and gold have to do with what I've just said? Well, they don't lose their value. They gain value, at least in comparison to government money. They actually don't gain or lose really at all. They kind of maintain their value throughout time. So if you want to save wealth, if you want to protect your wealth, not your money, because money isn't real. Money's a made-up thing that we all created to say, okay, I want to give you something that you can use to go buy something else that's a lot easier than you giving me your video and then I show up for 3 meetings for you. What if I don't want to show up for 3 meetings, right? Well, or, whatever it is, right? We can't really barter in the services that you and I provide necessarily, but it's a lot easier if I give you money or you give me money. That's why we created it. It's a technology that humans created. But the problem with government money is it loses value. And so why would you store wealth in it? Well, you can store wealth in something that has maintained value throughout the last 5,000 years of human history, and that's precious metals. That's gold, silver, platinum. So I am increasingly becoming a massive advocate to get as much of your wealth into one of 3 things for the future. And this is the advice that I would give to people. Now, I'm not a financial advisor, so don't
disclaimer.
People. This is what I'm doing, and you guys can all make your own decisions. I'm not going to measure my wealth in dollars anymore. I'm not going to care about how much money is in my government bank account or even my Bow Valley Credit Union bank account. I'm going to care about only 3 measures of value. I call it ounces, acres, and sats. Right?
I get that.
Would be precious metals, because those things hold value. They've been tested by all of human history. They're not going anywhere. That's a great place to store money. Land, always great. They're not making more of it, right? If you have land, that has value. Enough land, you can grow your own food and literally become self-sustaining, right? And then the problem is that a lot of people go into those 2 and they forget that everything's changed. And the way that everything has changed is we live in a digital age. You and I would not be able to have this conversation 12 years ago. right? You're probably 700 kilometers north of me right now, right? And yet we're having a real-time conversation. The world has changed and the digital age is upon us. And I believe that the money of the digital age is Bitcoin, not any other crypto, just Bitcoin. And my reason for it is this: Bitcoin is perfect money, not in the sense of exchange, but in the sense that it will not lose value. It can't lose value. Oh yes, it can fluctuate in comparison to fiat money, but the thing is, you can't make more of it. There will only ever be 21 million Bitcoin in the world. There's 58 million millionaires in the world. So if even all of them only bought one, then we would still, then they'd be gone, and those would be some of the most valuable assets in the world. The other thing about Bitcoin that's beautiful is it's divisible down to 100. There's a 100 millionth of a Bitcoin is called a sat. And so that's why I say that you should measure your wealth in ounces, acres, and sats. That's how you should store your wealth. That's how you should measure it. If you're measuring it in dollars, if you're transacting in dollars, you're measuring your wealth in a ruler that is constantly shrinking, right? Whereas if you measure it in ounces, well, human history has proven that's a pretty good store of wealth. If you measure it in land, that's a no-brainer. And now we live in a digital age, and there's only one truly hard currency, and the technology that's been created around it makes it almost impossible to change. Many have tried, none have succeeded. There may come a day where they do succeed, which is why I think you need to have money in ounces.
The other two. Yeah, that's right. I was going to say, we know during the Freedom Convoy, we know that a lot of people that donated, right, their bank accounts were frozen. I was just sharing a screen here earlier where it says, you posted this today, Canada to incorporate social scores in banking. Now, I did read, and I haven't really done enough digging on it to check the veracity of the claims, but that Bitcoin wallets, Ethereum wallets, and stuff like that were also seized. And I think I remember when the Tate brothers were originally arrested back a while ago, there was news of their Bitcoin wallets being seized. So I don't know if the funds inside the wallets themselves were seized, or if there was physical wallets, cold storage wallets that were seized. But with the advance in AI, quantum computing and stuff like that, that still does make me a little bit nervous. And so, yeah, that does I still have a lot of faith in physical gold, like in silver. The only way you can take it from me is to physically show up and physically take it from me.
I would say that is absolutely true, and I don't think you're making any wrong moves in maybe making that a larger portion. The only thing that I would say is we do live in the digital age, and I don't think we're going to stop living in the digital age. And also, there with Bitcoin, you can make it entirely anonymous. Like you can get it to the point where nobody knows that you own it, and literally, and this is the technology that's been produced, you can destroy your phone. And you can take what they call a passphrase, memorize it in your head, and you're literally carrying your wealth in your head, and nobody can touch it until you take that passphrase and put it into a node and repatriotize your money. So there are ways around the government stuff, but I agree with you. It's probably, but then again, if the government shows up to your house before there was ever computers or anything, and they want your gold and silver, they're not going to show up with one guy.
No,
right? They're gonna,
that's right. That's right. They're going to show up with a lot of brass is what they're going to show up with.
I always tell people, you want to see who owns your land, stop paying property taxes. Right? You'll find out pretty quickly who owns your land. So there's downsides to all of them. Now, I'd like to add one more thing, if I may, about silver and gold. Is I've been saying that reality is going to come back, and it's going to, reality always wins. Here's the reality of gold and silver. Right now, gold is at an all-time high. It's never been this high before, but silver is still 100% off. It has to go up 100% just to hit its all-time high. Silver is being shorted at an absolutely insane rate. It's absolutely bonkers. Here's how it gets really interesting. Okay? Right now there's 100 times more paper silver. That means like derivatives and stuff you can buy at a bank that you don't actually have the physical, but they claim you do. There's 100 times more than there is actual silver in reality, like that exists. So that is insane, right? That is obviously how they are suppressing the price. But it gets even weirder. Right now, you can go look this up on Google. The ratio of gold to silver, so the price, how many ounces of silver you need to get 1 ounce of gold, I believe, right as of today, it might be a little bit different, is 85.
Yeah, I was going to say it's around 80 or something.
90. Now, that might be like, well, that's just price, and that's what the market demands. But here's another weird fact. Every year, 8 ounces of silver are mined for every 1 ounce of gold. So in the Earth's crust, in the actual production of these two products, the ratio is 8-1. But it gets even weirder. Half of all silver that's mined every year goes straight into manufacturing of electric cars,
so panels,
batteries,
whatever. Yeah,
solar panels, your phone, right? There's silver in almost all technology because it is the best substance we have besides gold for conducting electricity.
For conducting, yeah.
So if the reality is that and I don't know the exact ratio in the crust of the earth, like actually how much silver and gold are in the crust of the earth, but the mining reality is 8-1. So, and the real ratio is 4-1 because nobody uses gold for manufacturing. That's stupid. It's too expensive. So the real ratio is 4-1, but right now, according to the markets, it's 85-1. I think we have a generational opportunity as investors, let's call it, as people who want to protect our wealth, because I think that ratio is going to go up at least to 20-1. And
you think so?
Yes, that's a 400% increase. And people say, oh, that's crazy. But in 2008, silver went up 250%. Before that, it went up a few 1,000%. In the last time it went. So I think you're going to see a huge spike. But even more importantly, let's say it never goes up really. Inevitably, money's going to become worth less and less. Silver's not going down from where it is right now.
That's right.
So that's kind of my thesis on protecting your wealth, very simply put. We are going to be doing a tour across Alberta, 5-stop tour, where we tell people these things. Brett Oland from Bow Valley Credit Union will be joining us to talk about how you can protect your money. I'm going to be bringing in an expert on gold and silver to talk about how you can protect your money that way, and an expert on Bitcoin. And they're going to have a panel and just talk about money and how you can protect it. They're not going to be allowed to sell their products. It's not going to be an opportunity for people to buy what they're selling. It's just going to be educational. And I just want to do that because I think what's coming, and even the RCMP are talking about the economic ruin that is coming upon us. That article came out yesterday in the National Post. It was a leaked document from the RCMP saying that the next 5 years are going to be very bad economically for Canada. I think if we're going to protect your wealth, I wouldn't be keeping it in Canadian dollars or even American dollars. Keep it in something that is either going to go up in value, like land, all of those things are going to go. I don't think they're going to go up in value, though. That's the thing. I saw a chart the other day. It said 600, I believe it was in 2016. Now, I'm going to get these days wrong, but the concept will be there. In 2016, it cost 660 Bitcoin to buy a house. In 2021, it cost 60 Bitcoin to buy a house. And at this last high, it would be 6. Right? That's not because a house is changing in value necessarily. That's what people don't understand. It's because money is losing value.
That's the with all these things these assets you're talking about, whether it be metals or Bitcoin, you have your fluctuations here and there, but over time,
there's a saying in the Bitcoin community: when in doubt, zoom out. If you look at the graphs, I think that's pretty wise.
And
I think the president of El Salvador is probably going to end up being one of the smartest people, one of the smartest leaders on the face of the earth,
by making Bitcoin legal currency,
making Bitcoin legal, and then having the government of El Salvador buy Bitcoin, because there's another line in the Bitcoin community that says Bitcoin has no top because fiat currency has no bottom.
I'll add when we're talking about those silver, the paper silver, right? In the stacking community, it's very famous to say, or very popular to say, if you can't hold it, you don't own it. And I agree with that. I agree with that.
Right? I 100%, and I believe that with Bitcoin too, right? There is ways to hold Bitcoin in your head. Like, that's the beauty of it. You could literally, I could destroy my phone or any wallet I have, but if I have that passphrase, I can go to any of the 10,000 nodes in the world and get that, right? So the phrase in the Bitcoin community is not your keys, not your money. Not your keys, not your Bitcoin. But I think there's a bigger idea here, okay? And that idea is, are we going to let government decide what our money is? Why do we do that? There are better forms of money. And we have created a technology as human beings, Bitcoin, which is much better, and it takes the control out of the government's hands. And it all comes down to sovereignty. It all comes down to being in control of yourself and your own money. And I think that's the bright future we can work towards. Where now, for a lot of people, though, that's not a bright future. Personal responsibility is scary. They want to be taken care of, and those people are the ones that we should be afraid of, because it's actually their laziness and fear that could enslave us all.
One more thing I would like to talk with you about. So we talked about building that democracy in Alberta. We just talked about ways you can prepare for the future and the harsh times, well, just in general, but also specifically for the next 5 years or so, as we're going to go into some real lean times. I'd like to pick your brain about this. So we talked about a little bit about the pension plan. We know that in Alberta, they are kind of converting the Alberta sheriffs over to some sort of para RCMP police force, and there's municipalities like Grand Prairie that are starting their own police services. So we have new police services being formed. We have the potential for an Alberta pension plan, which I think it's a no-brainer.
It is a no-brainer. The fact that the NDP think this is a winning issue just because the polls tell them it is, that's just because people are not educated on it. Once they're educated on it, it's a no-brainer. I agree.
So those are two of the things I remember were some of the campaign topics during the leadership race when Danielle became premier. And another thing that was on the agenda was Alberta separation or sovereignty, independence. And Todd Lowen made the point at a lot of the campaign stops that it's going to take a referendum to do that. And the Alberta Prosperity Project and other groups are doing a great job in moving the needle and educating people on that. But in order to get there, we're going to have our own pension plan. We're going to have our own police force and all these sort of things. And these things you don't necessarily need a referendum on. These are things that we can do without all the hullabaloo. And we're going to have those pieces in place before we achieve independence anyways. What is your thought on Alberta in Canada, or Alberta as some sovereign independent entity? I'm sure you've thought about this subject, so I'd just be curious to hear what your thoughts are on it.
Okay. Well, I personally am an Alberta first kind of person. But the problem is that Albertans don't want to leave Canada. And I'm more than anything a Democrat, and not in the crazy American political party sense, but in the sense of the will of the people is what matters. I mean, Elon Musk has a little bit of let's call it a blasphemous saying that he likes to put out: the voice of the people is the voice of God. I obviously don't believe that. But I mean, if the people decided to try to enforce things that I believed were against the will of God, I would fight those things. But by and large, on things that I don't think are moral issues, like whether Alberta should stay or go from Canada, I believe the people have to decide. So to your point, I don't think it's at all possible for us to have separation without something like the Alberta pension plan or an Alberta police force. And I think Alberta needs to collect its own taxes too. All things that Quebec already has within Canada. But an interesting point to be made on that is the most popular party right now in Quebec is a separatist party called the Parti Québécois. They're about to form one of the largest majority governments in Quebec's history, and they will probably be having a referendum on separation. That's part of their party constitution. It's something that they deeply care about, and I'm sure they'll be having it. I think that if Quebec is having a referendum on whether they want to stay in Canada, that Alberta should also have a referendum on whether or not they should stay in Canada. But frankly, I don't think it should just be Alberta. I think we should be talking to Saskatchewan, Manitoba, and BC. I think what's happening in BC is miraculous. And I think it could be something that becomes the foundation of a Western nation, another nation, a new nation. But Albertans aren't ready for that. Now, you look at the polling, separate people who agree with me on that particular point are probably about a third, maybe 30%, maybe even less. And I do believe in democracy, and I don't think we should enforce things on people that people don't want. So I think it's going to be a lot longer of a conversation than people think, but I think it could be expedited by the economic times we're going to see, because again, Pierre Poilievre is not going to be able to fix Canada. It's just not going to happen. The problems are too big and they're too severe, and the abuse that Alberta suffers is not going to be changed. I mean, I know that Pierre Poilievre is quietly putting pressure on the Alberta government not to push an Alberta pension plan, because while an Albertan pension plan would be very good for Albertans, it would
Not
be
for the
terrible
rest of Canada. Yeah.
It'd be terrible for Canadians, right? Because as of 2026, more money is going to be taken out of the Canadian pension plan every year than is put into it. And the reason for that is that there's a lot more old people in Canada than there are young people. And that's only a problem that's getting worse. Now, people have said, well, that's why we need immigration. Maybe that's true. Maybe it isn't. It certainly doesn't seem to be working right now at the volume that it's at. I am a big fan of the multiculturalism in this country. I'm not some kind of wild-eyed, white supremacist like people claim I am. I have lots of friends from other cultures. I don't care about people's skin color. I don't care about their religion. What I care about is their values. And if someone values things like hard work, if someone values things like, working hard to make a better life for yourself, but most importantly, freedom and freedom from government and from tyranny, then those are my friends. Those are my allies. That's what I care about. I think we're going to hit a very bad period of time in which, unfortunately for Pierre Poilievre, he's going to become the leader of a country that's falling apart. It's already falling apart. And I know that politicians can't fix that. So I think we're in for a very interesting time. And I think that Albertans could very quickly realize that they don't want to be dragged down by Ontario. Quebecers have already realized it. So we'll see where it goes.
The cancer's already grown. It's inoperable, and we're just waiting for it to be terminal.
Yeah, I think it's. I mean, this is really sad for me because I was one of the biggest Canadian patriots I've ever met. I gave 10 years of my life to Canadian democracy, not Alberta's democracy. I lived in Ottawa for a lot of that time. I believed in the Conservative Party of Canada. My ancestors settled southwestern Ontario, and one of my ancestors was the first white man born this side of the Grand River. So my blood comes from Ontario. My people, a lot of my people still live in Ontario. My family. I have a lot of cousins that live in Ontario. I loved that place. I think it's a beautiful place. I think it's got some of the best scenery in the entire world. I think it's got more opportunity than almost anywhere in the world. It's got the Great Lakes right there. You're not going to run out of water in Ontario. You really don't have to worry about droughts in the same way that you do here, for example. It's not as harsh of a place, as you pointed out. You came from southern Ontario. The weather's pretty nice. My wife is from Ontario, right? Her family's there, but I think it's been destroyed. I think they've destroyed something beautiful, And I had a podcast called The Canadian Story. And the purpose of that podcast was just to talk about why we loved Canada, and what the tagline was, what Canada is, what Canada could be, and what Canada should be. I was such a patriot that I wanted to help us build a vision for a future for this country. And I just realized that Canadians don't want that. They just want, to be comfortable. And I don't want to be a part of that. I don't want to be a part of the slow decline into comfort. I want to be uncomfortable. I want to be cold. I want to work hard, and I want to be free. And I just don't think Ontarians want that. And they are Canada, for better or worse. I lived in Ottawa for many years, working in politics. And even that whole time, when people asked me where I was from, who I was an Albertan. Every time we had a major election, 2012, 2015, uniting the parties, I always came back. My family's here. I'm not going anywhere. I'm an Albertan first. And if the choice is presented to me of saving Alberta or staying in Canada, I'm gonna work to save Alberta every time.
Absolutely. I'm with you on that. David Parker, thank you so much for coming on with us tonight. I really appreciate your time. And I wish you the best tomorrow as you head into the Lion's Den. May God protect you.
I'll see you there.
Yeah, I'll be there. I'll be there.
All right, TJ. Yeah, I'll see you tomorrow. And I'm going to go see if my son's got to bed yet, and get ready for, I think it's going to be good. I think it's actually going to be really good. I'm not going to go in there guns blazing. I'm just going to go there and say what needs to be said, and hopefully the people show up. That's what I'm hoping.
Absolutely, brother. Pleasure, sir. And so I'll see you tomorrow and in the future as well. And all the best with everything that you're doing.
Thanks, TJ.
Well, guys, there you have it. David Parker, Executive Director of Take Back Alberta, giving us some insights into the lay of the land here in Alberta. And that was a really good conversation, I think. Next week, we have Jake Julius from Rattlesnake TV coming on to talk about the culture war at large. And followed by that, on April 4th, we're going to be having Alex Cargill out of Quebec. We talked about Quebec a little bit today, so we'll be talking about the rise of populism, what it may mean for Canada, for Quebec, for Alberta, etc. And then the week after that, if you're curious about the Alberta pension plan, I'm going to have Nadine Wellwood on to answer your questions about the Alberta pension plan on April 11th. So make sure you tune into that. And then we have many more shows scheduled. So once again, thank you for joining us. If you do wish to, where are we here? If you do wish to support the show, you can do so at buymeacoffee.com/TJKennedyPhoto. There was somebody last week that left a Rumble rant for $10. Thank you. I'm sorry I didn't catch that at the time. I really appreciate your support. And if you would like to go to Amazon and search for this book, Fortis, a LIBER, I do have that for sale in paperback format at Amazon. You can also go to tjkennedy.me for the ebook. Really appreciate your support. And again, that is just a photographic chronicle of the Coos blockade and Milk River bear hug. So let me just pull that down. Guys, appreciate you, and we'll see you next Thursday.